97.3 ESPN.com and covers the league nationally. FanRag Sports NFL. He joins us every day at this time to talk NFL news and notes, Eagles. And as he writes at 97.3 ESPN.com, Chris Long met the media today, and he is really excited, John, it sounds like, coming back to Philadelphia. I love the story he told about his first ever game when he lines up across from Trey Thomas and says, what did I get myself into? But he is excited about, it sounds like, coming to a city that his father played college football in.
Yeah, real quick, I want to say I respect the John Frusciante reference, one of the great modern-era guitar players. I'm impressed.
There you go. There, that was my opening riff in my alternative music radio days.
Very, very impressed. But, yeah, Chris Long, it was funny because he brought up, as you mentioned, he said his first college game was at Lincoln Financial Field against Temple, and then his first pro game against the Eagles. And Trey Thomas and Donovan McNabb, that was obviously at the apex of Philadelphia's pretty powerhouse teams, and they put up 44 on him. I haven't checked to see if he remembers that correctly yet, but you could certainly believe it. And, you know, Trey Thomas was a heck of a player, so as a rookie, you're going to struggle against a left tackle like that. But he certainly learned from it, had a number of productive years in St. Louis on an individual level, but never really had the team success. He got that last year by winning the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. And now it seems to be for him about finding a fit for his skill set, and he believes Jim Swartz's scheme is that at 32 years old.
Yeah, John, you know, some would wonder, okay, he's 32. He didn't play a lot of snaps last year in New England. So is this just, as we kind of hinted at earlier in the week, a Band-Aid? Or is this Chris Long saying, you know what, I think I should be playing more? Didn't like his role in New England.
No, you kind of got that feeling he didn't like it that much. I don't know if he was he played a decent amount of reps. It was 65%. So he played quite a bit. I don't think that was the complaint, but he did mention he played a lot of three technique, and this is a guy who is used to being an edge rusher. He's used to playing in a wide nine, a 9 technique or a 7 technique, and certainly not on the interior. So you got the feeling he didn't think he was being used correctly. You don't hear that a lot when you're talking about the New England Patriots, and they won the Super Bowl. I think it was more of not necessarily that he wasn't being used correctly, because obviously he was with the success. It was more of he prefers to do something else, and he will get the opportunity to go back to where he's more comfortable here in Philadelphia, and that's as an edge rusher.
You say in the story that he finds his football fit. So in hearing him kind of talk about this, is it everything? Is it, his wife's from Philly, his father played here, the scheme? I mean, does he kind of look at Philadelphia as a place that he kind of targeted, or did they reach out to him?
Well, it was a little bit of both. He's certainly comfortable. He's certainly excited about playing in this market, and his father told him and gave him advice and how passionate the people can be. Obviously, how he played at Villanova, went to be a Hall of Fame player with the Oakland Raiders, but which also has a passionate fan base, as we've seen in recent days, as they're going to be losing them. But also, his wife is from Morristown, and the Morristown, the ES Morristown, the one in South Jersey, right over the Walt Whitman Bridge, and she grew up as an Eagles fan, and his in-laws are Eagles fans. And he mentioned how he got a Donovan McNabb autographed jersey one year and gave it to his wife for Christmas. So, from that standpoint, it's a fit as well. So it all came together, and I think, remember, this is more than a one-year deal. It was a 5-year deal, believe it or not, although it's a glorified 2-year contract where the last 3 years are voided. But nonetheless, he's going to have an opportunity to finish his career here if he plays well. So I think it's a fit from a number of perspectives.
John McMullen's with us. We talked to Frank about the Phillies in the last hour. We're talking Eagles right now and the NFL, and another little nugget of Eagles news. Ron Brooks took a pay cut here, and we had kind of talked about him earlier this week, John, about whether or not he even sticks around with the team because of that injury. Is this an indication that he will, A, be healthy, and B, that he will be around?
Well, it's an indication he's going to be given an opportunity to stick around. I don't think he would have. He was up and probably would have been released when he was able to pass a physical coming off the ruptured quad tendon if he did not renegotiate this deal. So what this does is it gives him an opportunity to be with the team throughout off-season work and potentially make the team in training camp. But it's not a guarantee he'll be here, but he'll certainly have an opportunity. And obviously, we know at that particular position, the Eagles need a lot of help. He's one of the only veterans, along with Patrick Robinson, who also spoke today and recently signed. So if he's healthy, he should have an opportunity to make this team, because it's pretty evident from the way things shook out last year that Jim Schwartz is very comfortable with him.
Yeah, and you mentioned Patrick Robinson, where some might think that, okay, will the Eagles use him as one of their top guys? Do they look at him as a slot guy? I guess now with Ron Brooks in the mix, it adds to the competition, at least, in that maybe Patrick Robinson, who, as you have said, might be the best guy they have talent-wise right now, and I probably agree with you, but it also shows that maybe nothing's guaranteed for him either.
No, not really.
I mean, do you look at him as akin to maybe? Do you look at him as akin to like the Ruben Randall deal, where like he might not even make the team if he's not a starter?
It's a possibility. It's not going to hurt the Eagles if he doesn't play well in training camp. If he doesn't do the things they expect him to do, yeah, it could go that route because they don't have a lot of money invested in him, but it's also pretty evident that if he's healthy, he's going to make this team. He's going to play. He's probably going to be a starter. So it all depends on how things shake out. Obviously, there was a groin issue, a sports hernia issue last year. There were concussion issues in Indianapolis. So basically, his entire season was wiped out. So we have to see if he's healthy, number one. If he is healthy, I don't think it's going to be much of a stretch for him to make this football team. But, yeah, I mean, it's a prove-it deal, and he admitted that today. And he's going to have to prove things in training camp, prove he can still play in this league. But remember, this is a talented guy. This is a guy who signed a big-time contract in San Diego a couple of years ago. He was a former first-round pick. He's good friends with Malcolm Jenkins. They're very comfortable. Malcolm's one of the reasons he's here. So I think while it is a Band-Aid, the Eagles are expecting quite a bit out of Patrick Robinson, and they're hopeful. But with his injury history, it's certainly not guaranteed.
John, are there any corners still on the market that the Eagles could bring in? Mike mentioned Ruben Randall that maybe could be there. Chris Givens, corners or wide receivers?
Corners.
Right.
The version of Ruben Randall and Chris Givens, two veteran guys that they brought in last year.
Yeah, Alteron Verner's still out there. That's a guy I thought they might have some interest in for the same reason they signed Patrick Robinson. As a veteran presence. But you get the feeling this is the guy, this is the veteran guy. You knew they had to bring in one at some point. They did it. You never say never with Howie Roseman, but I think free agency is probably over for the Eagles. And now their shift toward the draft, and there's no question they're going to add multiple bodies at that position in the draft, and not only that, also undrafted college free agents. They're going to be bringing in numerous bodies, and I think it's going to be incumbent upon guys like Robinson and Ron Brooks, for that matter, as veteran players to sort of teach the younger guys, get them up to speed, and teach them how to be professionals. And also, Malcolm Jenkins will help out, and Rodney McLeod. They're much more obviously competent at safety, and those guys will help as well. But there's no question that position is going to be an issue for the Eagles this season. There's not much you can do at this point except cross your fingers and hope some young guys really pick up things early and play well.
John McMullen's with us, 97.3 ESPN.com, and I got your question there, PT. I know which direction you were going. The guy didn't even understand his own question there. I was paying attention, John.
Well, he's got to bail me out. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But no, he makes an interesting point. Like, last year they brought in Ruben Randall and Chris Givens, and that now it seems like after they said no Band-Aids that they might be going down that same road at corner by bringing in a couple of guys who Ruben Randall was a high draft choice that had some promise and never really had been consistent. And let's be honest, Patrick Robinson had a pretty good year in San Diego that got him he got a good deal based on the good year he had in San Diego.
Yeah, and as I said, he's a former first-round pick, so obviously there was a pedigree. There's a skill set there. He's a talented guy, but the injuries have piled up. And the other part I think the Eagles like is he is versatile. You mentioned before, Mike, he can play inside, he can play outside. And, when you look at how the NFL is sort of enveloping the last few seasons, you rarely see guys who do both things. It's either you're a nickel cornerback or you play outside the numbers. So it's always good to have a guy who's versatile and can move around and play different positions. So while I think you look at this signing on paper and say 1 year, $1 million, that's not a big deal for the Eagles. It's a bigger deal because of their need at the position. It's a bigger deal, and they just look at it as tremendous value because they expect Patrick Robinson to be a big part of this defense next year.
All right, a lot of NFL news to get into as well. Hey, if Chip Kelly were still here, this probably be bigger news for Eagles fans, but Deion Jordan has been waived. I guess that has been bust-a-roni right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Chip got lucky on that one because he ended up getting Lane Johnson.
How many times? How many times was Deion Jordan getting traded to the Eagles? Like 7?
Yeah, well, he was trying to get him. There's no question about that. And hey, you can't blame that one on Chip Kelly. At some point, you gotta blame it. You gotta blame it on the kid. Because he did have tremendous talent, and obviously he squandered it in Miami. Hopefully he'll be able to get himself a second chance somewhere, and maybe the light goes off. Who knows? But that certainly worked out that the Eagles weren't able to do that, because even though Lane Johnson has had his own suspension issues, while he has been on the field, he's been a tremendous player, and continues to be and is expected to be again next year. So that's one that kind of worked out, even though they weren't able to get it done.
Yeah. Well, I guess he was, what do you have, an injury settlement there too? So he has been hurt, to be fair.
Well, he's suspended. He's had a lot of substance abuse penalties. And so mainly it's been that. He hasn't been able to, and hey, we can talk about the substance abuse policy and whether it's PEDs or recreational, and people can talk about whether it's fair or not. But the bottom line is, from an NFL standpoint and from a team standpoint, it's in the CBA, and you have to abide by the rules. And if you're not on the field, if you're suspended, you're not capable of helping your team, so you're no good to your particular team. So that's what happened to Deion Jordan in Miami, and unfortunately, right now he looks like a guy who had tremendous talent that's always going to be a bust because he was never able to keep his nose clean.
John, give us your...
No pun intended. I didn't mean that as a cocaine reference.
Give us your prognostication on what happens with Tony Romo. Is he a television broadcaster or a football player?
Well, I think he wants to play football because he's a competitive guy, but I think as it goes on, I think people might get into his ear and say, man, this is a sweet deal. And I think if he ever thought about taking it, I think he'd be happy for the rest of his life because I think he would be very good at it. And CBS, for one, specifically is talking about not only football but golf for him, and he obviously loves golf as well. So I think ultimately, obviously, that's going to be his second career. He will be in TV at some point. But just when you look at the punishment and the injuries this guy has taken, I don't know why he would want to go back on the field with a chronically bad back and go through all that. But, hey, professional athletes are professional athletes for a reason, and one of the main reasons is they're just extremely competitive. And I think he's a guy who wants to win a Super Bowl and a guy who sees a chance to do that in Houston specifically. So I still think he wants to get there. But as things continue to sort of waver out there and hang on and the Cowboys sort of drag their heels, that's another day he can start thinking about it and saying, you know what, maybe CBS is the way to go. And we'll see how it shakes out. I still think ultimately, though, he wants to play football, and he will be playing football.
John, I want to loop back to Chris Long for just a second here because you talked about his contract. It says it's a 5-year deal, but it's not really 5 years. I saw a tweet that said NFL fans don't understand the way salaries work, and the NFL loves that. Agents perpetuate it, and they shouldn't. Do you agree with that tweet?
I do. You constantly hear it, especially early when you see these big-time deals. At one point it was about probably a week to 10 days into free agency, all the contracts signed, 85% of them were essentially one-year deals. Yet you'll see agents put out numbers like 5 years for $55 million, and that's because of potential bonuses and down the road and salary they could earn. But from the team's perspective, they could move on after 1 year and wouldn't have any issue whatsoever under the salary cap or any guaranteed money. And, agents are so bright and they want to look good. There's about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've talked with Mike about this in the past, you always had to pay attention to guaranteed money when talking about NFL contracts. Now you can't even pay attention to that. You have to look for the phrase fully guaranteed money because that is where agents have gone. And so when you see the only thing that matters to a player is what's fully guaranteed at signing, and that's all you're promised, and that is all you're probably going to get. And for the vast majority of players, like Alshon Jeffrey was a perfect example. When that was first reported for the Eagles, it was 1 year, $15 million, and everyone said, well, that's not bad for 1 year. But in reality, he's only fully guaranteed $9.5 million. And the rest of it he has to earn through incentives. And if he plays well, he could certainly do that. But if he doesn't, and if he gets hurt or something of that nature, he's only making $9.5 million. So you're correct, Pete. The average fan does not understand contracts in the NFL, but I don't necessarily blame them because it's such minutia. Who has time to sift through these things?
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 Eagles insider and also FanRag Sports.com national columnist, covers the NFL. So, John, what's with all the quarterbacks saying that they want to play into their mid-40s now?
Well, hey, if you can do it. I mean, Tom Brady, Robert Kraft was out there saying he wants to play another 6 or 7 years. And that would be something if he could do it. And I guess if anybody could do it, it would be Tom Brady. It is one of those positions, though, you can play into your late 30s or even early 40s and be somewhat effective if you play a certain style. You have to be obviously a pocket-style quarterback, a traditional quarterback that reads defense as well, that understands defenses. Obviously, you're not going to be running a zone read attack at age 40. So it depends on what type of quarterback you are. But as we also know, you should realize from watching the end of Peyton Manning's career, there's a guy who threw 55 touchdowns, was the league MVP, and 2 years later he was physically shot. So it happens to everybody, and it's even going to happen to Tom Brady, and it generally creeps up very quickly. When it happens quickly, and I don't think Tom Brady is going to be playing the 46 or 47.
I'd like to see how that goes for him personally. And what did Drew Brees said? He thinks he can play till he's 45.
Yeah, and there's another guy. I mean, he's a tremendous, again, pocket-style passer. I would argue the greatest pure passer of this generation, just 5,000-yard seasons after 5,000-yard season. And he's 38, and he's still playing at a high level. But as we've seen, and we saw it with Tony Romo to a certain degree, who's had, back injury, broken clavicle, how quickly those injuries can start piling up. And it only takes one big hit. And these guys like Myles Garrett, the perfect example, 265-pound, 22-year-old kid who's running a 4.45. If he catches you and hits you the right way, well, you're not going to play till you're 46.
And one thing, though, for Brady, he doesn't get hit a whole heck of a lot. So of the two, I can envision him hanging around a little bit longer. But John McMullen, all the NFL news and notes, FanRag Sports NFL, all the Eagles stuff at 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter. John, have a good weekend, pal.
Hey, you too, guys.
Take care.
WrestleMania.
That's right, WrestleMania this weekend.